All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our first ever Unleashing Microsoft Teams community call. Very excited to have you today. Looking forward to having some fun with you, not only on this call, but on future events. Just a quick round of intros, your two speakers today, and these are going to vary over the course of the next events. But this is me right here. I'm Jace. I lead Teams platform for our global customer success organization. And then Pawan is going to be coming in a little bit later to talk to you about one of these components of Microsoft Teams. And Pawan looks after Power Apps and Power Platform for our customer success organization globally as well. We also have some legendary customer success managers behind the scenes right now who are going to field your questions as we go through the call. So don't hesitate, speak up, ask the questions. You can keep them private if you request, or we can post them publicly so everybody else can see the answers to your questions. So to kick things off, we're going to make the most of the hour, and I'm going to jump right into it here. Now, bear with me for a second on starting with a quote. I start with this one because I absolutely love this quote from our CEO, if you're not familiar there, Satya Nadella. And he shared this in an interview and then later in his book a couple years back. And he talks about us not joining Microsoft to be cool, but to help make others cool. And I love this quote because this is the way I felt over the past 2 years looking after this Microsoft Teams platform, which I'll explain that to everybody and what it means here in a bit. But helping customers really see that Teams is much more than just chat and meetings and calling, which are core and fundamental to the way that we get work done today more than ever. But really helping them see, how do you unleash Microsoft Teams? How do you leverage these other components of your organization and investments you've made, whether or not Microsoft built them? And so I think at what his core, Satya is really saying here is that we're a platform company. We have been for a very long time. And Teams is no different. And we're going to show you what that means today in the context of how it helps you get work done better, with real examples from Microsoft as well as from your peers around the world. Now, quick disclaimer. Cool comes in many different shapes and sizes, and forgive me for using the term cool, right? But we've got a very diverse group on the call, not only geographically, not only culturally, but also with respect to your team's experience. And so we took that into account when we put this first call together. And so today is going to cover what's possible from the basics to the most complex. And so you can get a real idea of how we unleash teams, again, within Microsoft and within other organizations around the world and with your peers. And then after today's session, each future call will be live with specific topics and scenarios that we'll cover almost entirely with local examples and speakers. All right, so you'll hear from a bunch of different peers around the world, from other organizations, as well as from Microsoft as we see fit. All right, so getting into this, give a little bit of background on why we're here today, obviously other than an opportunity to block off some time in the never-ending calendar invites. And I wanted to really quickly talk about the reality of the modern workplace. And today, I need to update these photos because they're very much office photos, but today, work has obviously become digital almost overnight for most of us. And that varies by organizations. Many were on the path to get there, or we're already living this every day, but we heard from a customer recently that, they've been talking about digital transformation for 10 years, and it happened over the course of 3 days when COVID hit. And employees have access to all the tools they need to effectively work when they're outside the office. Technology really is incredible today that's sitting at our fingertips. But the challenge that we see is that many organizations haven't had the time to redesign work to take advantage of this new medium. And so instead, many organizations ultimately end up recreating how they worked in the office and now bringing that to online. And the challenge is that a lot of these bad habits will get extrapolated. There's hyper responsiveness, always feeling like you need to be on. It's multiple people on meetings and calls who often don't speak, but then have to get in the thank you everyone at the end to seem like they were present and contributing. And it's hundreds of interruptions during the day, sometimes thousands, with all of your different collaboration tools. And most people keep notifications on, so every single one of them distracts you and dings on your desktop and creates this physical and mental reaction. And so we wanted to put some data behind that. And we did a research report with Gartner a few years back. And we never actually publicly shared this information, but I wanted to share 3 stats with you that I think perfectly sum up this reality and the challenge that we're facing in the workplace. And the first is we surveyed organizations with over 5,000 people. And we focus on desk workers, right? These knowledge workers. And we wanted to understand how much time they spend each day tracking down information. And we found that the average was 20%. Now, is that new in 2020 or 2 years ago when we did this? Maybe not. But should we be better with the tools and the technology that we have at our fingertips today? Absolutely. That's a lot of time to spend just searching and tracking down information. And then on that same note, these same people spend an additional 28% of their day just managing email. Now, I'm not the millennial who's sitting here telling you that email is going to be going away, right? But again, it should be better in 2020. And when you step back for a second and you think about these average desk workers in these larger organizations, they're spending almost 50% of their day just managing work. And I'd like to tell you it's better inside of Microsoft, but I see it inside of our organization as well, right? Somebody really honest with you through these community calls. And then finally, the last stat to me, which was probably the most concerning at all, and it really goes back to this huge amount of tools that we have at our fingertips for collaboration and meetings and chats and connecting with one another, is that almost 6 out of every 10 managers said that they felt they were missing important information daily due to information overload. So if I can really sum up what I think the key thing this data is telling us is that productivity isn't just about the tool, it's also about the approach. And there's 2 things I want to say on that. And I say this with all humility, is that I do think we've built one of the best tools in Microsoft Teams in order to actually deliver an incredible workplace experience. However, with this comment, that doesn't happen by just giving it to people, right? We very much need to work with organizations on the approach. And it's why we've invested in one of the most and the largest customer success organizations on the planet, is to really focus on that approach. And that's why, I joined this team. Frankly, I wanted to be a part of it as we saw Microsoft Teams evolving. So with that, one of the most successful approaches that we've seen, I wanted to share with you, and it's when organizations start presenting Teams a little bit differently, and not just as a replacement for workloads. And by that, I mean for chat and meetings and calling. Again, incredibly important and foundational to work today, probably now more than ever. But a lot of organizations who really see success talk about Teams as an opportunity to meet their people where they already are. So how do you start to allow users within your organization to leverage the apps they know and love every day in one single pane of glass or an experience, whether or not Microsoft built them? And so when we talk about this Teams platform, Teams is this platform that's built as a shell of sorts, and you can bring together your workplace applications. I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a live demo in a second. But just to show you what that encompasses is the first is you can obviously leverage Microsoft apps inside of Teams on day one. So if you go down to your Teams app store on the bottom left-hand side of your client, you can get 45 applications available on Microsoft Teams. Okay, then you can go to third-party applications. We have over 450 available today. So these are applications that were not built by Microsoft, but are available inside of Teams again on day one, assuming your tenant admin has made them available. And then finally, we have custom applications. And these render in various different ways, but the sky's the limit on these ones. And so a couple we'll touch on today is low code, no code. So how do you enable the average users within an organization who maybe don't have a tech background to build some solutions that make their life easier at work? And then we have app templates, which we'll show you here in a bit, which again are low code, no code applications built off of common scenarios that we've seen organizations building across the planet. And then we have built from scratch. So again, we'll touch on all of these, and I'll reference this slide as we come back to each one of these scenarios and examples on what you're about to see. But if there's one thing that I hope gets ingrained into everyone's retinas today, it's that, again, Teams is this opportunity to meet your people where they already are because it's a scaffolding, right? This is what our Teams engineering team talks about all the time. But it's this front door to the organization that allows you to bring together all of your workplace applications and leverage them better. And again, I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. So sorry, that wasn't the slide I meant to show you. But what we're going to say now is imagine if your workplace applications and information were there just when you needed them. And so originally, I was actually going to show you a bunch of different ways that applications render inside of Teams. But we thought, you know what? Let's actually make this real. Let's put our money where our mouth is and show you how Microsoft is leveraging this internally. And so what I'm about to show you, going back to that slide again, is you're going to see these components of my Teams experience here and how we actually planned the event that you're in right now. So with that, give me one sec here. I'm going to pull up my Teams experience. And what I'm going to pull over to the screen right here is I am in the Teams tab over here on the left, and I'm in this team called the Teams Platform Roadshows. Now, before today, the way we'd actually run these events is we did them on a little bit more intimate basis, where we'd have, maybe somewhere between 5 and 20 customers who would get together and we'd run some of the content that you're about to see. And we thought we had a great opportunity to do this at scale, so to speak, and start these community calls. And what we do is we plan each one of these events in this team here. Now, the way this starts is one of our customer success managers will reach out to me, or I'll reach out to them, and we'll talk about hosting an event. And so the first thing that I'll do in this team is I'll go in and I'll create a channel for that event. Now, I'm not going to do this right now to save us time, but I just hit add channel here and I go in and I'd add a channel for the event. And as you can see down here on the left-hand side, each channel has the name of that event and the date for it, assuming we've confirmed the date. Okay, so that'll be the first thing that I do is I create the new channel. Then inside of this general channel, which we pretty much use just for rare announcements, but to also house our most important content, is if I go up to the Files tab right here, I've got all my files that I need. And then for the first time that I'm welcoming somebody in to plan a new event, I've actually got a wiki tab right here where I've got a welcome message that all I do is copy and paste it, and then I'll go post into the brand new channel that I've invited that person in to plan. Now, if you're not familiar how to add these tabs, you can do this in chats and channels. All you need to do is hit the plus sign right here, and you'll have a bunch of different applications available that your organization has enabled in order to add those tabs into Teams. So as you can see, the wiki is the one I showed you earlier. I'll show you websites here in a bit. There's a variety of applications built by Microsoft and not built by us that you can enable in these channels. But it creates this consistent experience that becomes easy to follow for your users. Okay, so then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I will add a new customer success manager to the team. All right, so I'll create the channel first. I'll have that ready to go. I'll add a new member to the team. So again, I'm not going to walk everybody through that, but you get the gist of it. And then I'll go down and I want to show you an example of a team that we're working on planning right now. So Steve's one of our customer success managers in the South Central US, and we're going to be planning an event for those folks. And so what I've done is before I actually added Steve, I stepped ahead one step. Before I actually added Steve into this channel, I went ahead and I took that content from the wiki tab and I posted it in here in the chat. And so he jumps into this channel. I'll end up tagging him, and I'll show you that here in a moment. And then what I do is I actually pin this conversation. So Steve will see it, and every person that he invites later to the team will see it. And if you're not familiar how to pin, what I do is I just I hover over the conversation, I click on more options, and I hit pin down here. And so what this will do is it'll pin this conversation that I've had right here, this forum, if you will, for everybody new that comes into the team. So I'm going to make Steve an owner so Steve can add new people for this team. And so it walks him through a bunch of steps. I won't walk you through it, but it basically shows Steve what we need to do to get this event kickstarted and really get things going. And the first thing is to request a registration page. So in the general channel, I've made this easy for the group, and I've worked with a couple of vendors. Big shout out to Heidi and Lindley who have helped me do this. But there's a tab on here that I click on that says registration site request. And now what this is, it's a very simple Microsoft form, okay? And so we've embedded this in the channel, and each customer success manager can go in here, they can fill out this form. And the beauty of what happens is once they fill out that form and hit submit at the bottom, so they give us basic information, is we get a notification in the general channel that a new registration request has been submitted. And that looks like this. Sorry, I was going a little slow for me because I got a lot going on on the computer right now. But right here at the top of my screen, this is the notification from the Flowbot that I've got a new registration received. I can click on that button, and then we can go use all of that content that the customer success manager gave us to set up the registration page for the event. Now that registration page is the same one that you saw when you registered for this event here. But then they can also look at these other tabs, and I've given them this in order, but they can leverage this planning OneNote. I've got pitch videos, which will show how to pitch some of the content that we'll cover today. And then they've got a roadshow schedule and calendar. So a ton of information here. The final thing I want to show you is this right here is the actual channel that you're seeing where we planned the call that you're on right now, this live event. So this is the America's Time Zone Community Roadshow. And so in here, there's a couple of things. All of our conversation happened here. There was no side conversation. So we planned on this all on one single channel. We've also got, because I often will get asked these questions because people will lose links, is where is the registration page? What's the link to the registration page? And I've embedded that as a tab here in the channel. This is a planner where we actually track upcoming topics and customers that we're going to be inviting to these future events. And we have some amazing ones on here. And then what I do is I also embed the presentation, like the one we're using today here as a tab in Teams, so we can all work on it together and co-author it. So awesome place to just, again, organize and connect with the folks that are planning this right here. And again, I shared the file, you can see right here, the deck, and I'm constantly getting feedback from the team who helps support this. So finally on this, what we do is you can scroll up a little bit and you can notice that we've actually forwarded the daily registration reports because we want our customer success managers to be able to follow up with you should you have one. And so what I did in order to do that is if you click on the channel and you get the email address to that particular channel, I can copy this, and then through the event builder, which is the registration page you use to get here, we forward a daily registration email report to the channel of choice. So each one of these channels has a daily report coming in for their registration so they can track and connect with their customers who might be coming to the event and following up afterwards. And there's no PII on there, it's just an update on the registration report and the organizations that are coming. Again, so makes my life really, really easy. And then the last thing I'll show with you is once we're done with these events, so this is an individual event we did, actually I'll show you Singapore here. Actually, you know what, I'll go back to Malaysia, sorry. And so what we did after our Malaysia event on May 14 is I went in and I shared a deck here, which was the impact, so which customers came and the impact of the conversations that we had. We also have some content that I'll let them track progress and the success of the event itself. And then what I will often do as well is I'll actually post a recording if we have one. And the way I do that, so we didn't have one for Malaysia, but just so you can see what we're doing, and I'll do this today for the Americas time zone call, is I go down here and I click on what is a messaging extension. So when we talk about applications when you need them, this allows me to go in and search through YouTube for videos that I want to share. So the recording today that we'll probably call Unleashing Teams Americas Call 1 or something like that, I'll be able to go on here, I'll be able to search YouTube just like I am right now without having to leave Microsoft Teams and hopefully get some videos. As you can see, my PC is running pretty slow, but usually a bunch of videos will pop up and then I'll be able to, awesome, I'll be able to click on those videos and share them directly in the Teams team. And I can't spell. Anyway, just take my word on it. But this messaging extension, you can do this with a bunch of different applications you can see down here. And so they let you invoke the applications that you want to interact with. I got a lot going on my PC, which is probably why it's not connecting with YouTube right now. But it's really great because the YouTube card will let me share a little preview. So again, one real example that we've got here for you on how we're doing this every single day. So hopefully that help gives a little context. Look, moving on to this next point, though, we wanted to make sure that we shared some examples of what your peers around the world are doing. And so to kick that off, before I show you the first example, as I mentioned earlier, I've been looking after Teams platform for the past couple of years at Microsoft. And this wasn't necessarily built by our Microsoft teams. I put this together based on the common engagements and discussions we've had with customers around the planet. And we often see this very common maturity curve of how organizations are leveraging Microsoft Teams. And so most of them will start down here with the basics, right? And I even wrote a little, forgot I had a little build on the slide right there. But what we've noticed is that the higher up people start, the more value they realize faster. So at some point, some folks might start enabling some of their existing applications that weren't built by Microsoft and Teams. And then you might look into something like Power Platform, which I'll cover here in a bit if you're not familiar with it, to start connecting your process flows and creating workplace automation. And then finally, some organizations might even take their own investments in what we call line of business solutions, or the tools that you built for your organization to get work done. And how do you bring those into the Teams experience? And again, what we've seen is that the higher up organizations start, the more value they realize faster. And it's not about complicating things for the end user, quite the contrary. It's about creating consistency and familiarity. It's about simplifying. It's about modernizing these investments you've made to make them more valuable. And so again, I want to show you what that looks like here in a second. I want to make sure that I've got audio on for everybody. There we go. And so I want you to imagine if here you had few people who were responsible for helping many. Now, I would bet quite a few of you on this call might fall into that category. I know I sure do. And this was the same challenge that was facing Dentsu Aegis Network a couple of years ago when we started working with them. Now, real quick for some background is they had a 3-person IT support team that was responsible for technology that they rolled out to 60,000 plus people including Microsoft Teams. And so you can imagine they have to scale. 3 people responsible for 60,000 leveraging the investments they made in technology as an organization. And so in 2017, they built a SharePoint site called WorkSmart. And if you're not familiar with SharePoint, it's just an intranet site. And it was used as the single place to give people videos and training content in order to learn how to use the technology they had at their fingertips. And then when they started rolling out Microsoft Teams, they wanted to see if they could drive organic adoption of Teams. And by that, I mean, can we get people to use Teams without having to run formal training courses all over the world? Because they've got 60,000 people in 170 countries and 3 people running change management. And so I want to give you a quick video here of what they did. And then what we'll do is we'll go behind the scenes and see exactly how they delivered what you're just about to see. And I've got captions on this for everybody if it's not coming through as quickly as you like.
We're one of the largest media agencies globally.
60,000 people in 170 countries. We had to think really carefully about how we rolled out Teams. We didn't have a lot of resource to drive this rollout. We only had a team of 3 people.
By leveraging the third-party tools and the extensibility of Teams, we were able to build a chatbot to help people find answers. How do I do this? Where do I find that?
We didn't have to have a big training team.
And we've only sent 1 communications to announce the move from Skype to Teams. One of the most interesting things that we saw was the viral adoption. People saying, have you seen this product? It works really well.
We started with a pilot of 5,000 users. We're now at 30,000 users. Teams provides many different business benefits. It has rejuvenated other existing platforms and technology investments we had. Teams becomes your front door for everything you do, changes the game on many levels.
All right, so I came from marketing, and we did that video when I was in marketing. I used to always get the feedback. It was, Jace, that's great. It's a minute video. We can put it on stage, but a lot of customers want to know how that was delivered. Now, again, I know we have some folks on the call who Teams is fairly new to them, and then we have some folks who are very advanced and everything in between. So we're going to bounce around on some of these examples and scenarios. So you saw some of the basics on the last demo that I gave. What I want to go is a little more advanced with this Dentsu example and show you how they actually drove organic adoption with Teams, leveraging what you just saw in the video. And so what they said is, we said, look, we've made this investment in that intranet site, that WorkSmart site, to allow people to use technology. How can we modernize that and bring that and leverage it in Microsoft Teams so people learn how to use Teams inside of Teams? And so I want to show you the evolution of the journey that Dentsu had to get to the point where they were in your video. And the way this started is before Microsoft Teams is when a new user was assigned technology inside of Dentsu. If they had a question, they'd reach out to one of those 3 IT collaboration leads. And this probably started in email a while back. And then that collaboration lead would pull information from their own brain, from the internet, from their peers, or from other internal resources and knowledge bases, and get that person a question, or get that person a response. So support 101 in this case, right? Effective takes too long though, right? And so what they said is, all right, we can rethink this process. Why don't we actually, instead of always having this become so responsive, is what if we took that information that we were using to answer questions in the first place, and we put it into an intranet page? So again, that WorkSmart site that we've been talking about. And now when a new user asks the IT collaboration lead a question, that person can point them to the WorkSmart page in order to get an answer if it's relevant to adopting the technology. And so that was version 2.0, and that was pretty successful, but even Dentsu admits they wanted to modernize it and they wanted to get more people to more easily find the content they needed at the right time. And so here's what they did and how they made what you saw in the video a reality. Is they said, okay, now we've got all this information sitting on the WorkSmart site, and we want to see if we can get people to self-serve and learn how to use Teams inside of Teams. And so what if we actually connect this website, this intranet site, into a Teams bot? And every time the Teams bot is asked a question, it's actually just pulling in information from the website itself. So we call this a knowledge base here. And a knowledge base doesn't need to be a website. I've never written a line of code in my life, and I've built a Teams bot where my knowledge base is actually an Excel file or a Word document, right? So there's many places you can leverage in order to get these bots to connect with users. But then what the department did is they said, we're going to reach out to people proactively this time and tell them that Teams is coming. And in order to get answers to the questions that you have, the WorkSmart bot is going to be pinned to the left-hand side of Teams. And I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. But it's like an application on the left-hand side of Teams below meetings and chats and activity. And you need to ask that bot the question first if you have a question in Teams. And if it can't answer your question, what it'll do is it'll notify one of these 3 collaboration leads who then will get back to you with a question. So that was their 3.0, the support that they saw. And you heard Dom in the video, who's their CIO. He said that over the course of 4 months, November 2018 to March 2019, Dentsu had 30,000 people using Microsoft Teams with 0 formal training by leveraging exactly what you're seeing right here that they did. Now, they spent a couple months putting together this Teams bot and making sure that it had natural language and leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence, but an incredible way to leverage these investments that they've already made. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is what they're doing now is if the Teams bot cannot answer a question for users, they're working on automating the ability to raise a ServiceNow ticket and connecting this into their ServiceNow experience. So really cool evolution of the journey there on what Dentsu was doing. Again, wanted to now make sure that we're going to show you a real example of how we're doing this inside of Microsoft. So again, what you're about to see is I'm going to show you a way that we leverage what we call application templates right here. And we're going to have Pawan on in a bit to show you what that looks like. But we have an application that our Teams engineering team built, which I'm going to pull up here, called Appy. Now, Appy is pretty cool. Appy is basically a combination of 2 Teams app templates. And all Appy is, since my computer is going pretty slow right now because I'm doing a ton, it is the same setup as the Dentsu scenario that we just discussed. So this tab right here, which is called Platform Library, that is a SharePoint intranet page. And what we did with our Teams engineering group is we worked together to bring together all of the core Teams platform content and resources so our customer success managers and engineers around the globe can leverage it when they're talking to customers. Because we have a lot of great scenarios and examples, just like the Dentsu one that we talked about just now. But we want people to be able to find that content and reduce that 20% of time that folks are spending searching for information, if you remember what we talked about at the beginning. So in comes Appy. Now, there's a couple cool things with Appy. Appy can actually proactively send message to users. So we will do this from time to time where I've got it pinned right here on my left rail, as I mentioned, and Appy will notify me with some kind of announcement. So very recently, we got an announcement around remote work and the key Teams apps to deliver great remote work in organizations. But then I can also leverage Appy to search and find content that I need. And I've got a bar down here that actually gives me some hints on what Appy can do. And so in this case, let's say that I'm about to have a presentation with a customer and I want to find some content that's relevant to the customer that I'm going to be speaking to. And so in this case, I want a success story, actually. Let me find a success story that's relevant to some of the challenges my customers having with the way that they use technology internally. And then let's say that I've got an option if I want to use ready-to-use applications or custom. So I'll click on custom. And again, as this search is evolving, all it's doing is pulling content and information from this resource library right here. And then let's say, all right, there we go, Dentsu. The video that you just saw, let's say that that's the one that comes up and I think is the most relevant. What you'll see right here is the Dentsu video comes up, or the video comes up itself. I have a link to the video itself, and then I can also share feedback if this wasn't helpful with the creators of the bot itself. And so I can search through this whole content library just leveraging these application templates here. So again, real example of how we're leveraging this within Microsoft. And again, this is the knowledge base right here, this platform resource library, which is a SharePoint site leveraging all of this content that we've brought together via multiple people who look after this part of the business. And so you can access the resource library right here from within Teams, but you can also engage with Appy in the chat experience. So again, just wanted to give you a quick example of how we're doing this internally. I absolutely love using that service. And it makes my life as one of the folks who looks after Teams platform across the company so much easier. I'm just checking questions real quick. Cool. Just making sure the guys didn't have any questions to cover. Hey guys, also from the Microsoft side, feel free to interject if you've got anything that comes up. That's great. And so from here, we thought, okay, where do you get started? We get a lot of organizations that want to deliver their own innovation. And the thing I'll say was, while it's really fun and exciting to have these conversations, we also admittedly get a lot of folks who come to us and say, we want to build a bot for Teams, or we want to build an app for Teams. And we're humbled by that. And we're very excited by that opportunity. But I'd say take a step back first. And I'm stealing a slide here from our Teams design group, one of the folks who designed the Teams product and engineering. And when they have customer conversations and when they do workshops, they always talk about starting with a business scenario. What is it you're trying to accomplish or solve? And so here's a couple questions that I'll leave with you that we often ask, but I think these two are probably the most relevant. Is how are you getting work done today, and where are the pain points in that current work process? Or where does work slow down, right? Where do you struggle with that process every day and you know that it could be better? Now, as you can imagine, over the course of the past 3 years, we've seen a lot of common scenarios that customers are delivering within their organizations. And so here's a slide with some categories that we put together to help. And I've even taken a few and highlighted them in green for the ones that we're hearing quite often and that you're going to see some examples of as we go through the rest of the presentation today. So again, this is recorded, so I'm going to leave this with all of you. We don't need to go through them. But most importantly, what we wanted to share with you today is that we're here to help you get started. Again, we've learned a lot over the past 3 years, thanks to so many of you on the call and your peers around the world. And so we want to help you get started more easily. Now, before I show you what you're about to see, I want to clarify, even if you are a beginner user on Teams, this isn't about being technically savvy. A lot of this is designed to let you get started really quickly and easily. And there's 3 places when it comes to delivering applications in Teams that we see organizations often get started. Often for the end user here, it's just using your existing solutions. And if you didn't see it earlier, in the bottom left-hand side of Teams, you've got the Teams App Store, where publicly available applications are there for you to use, again, assuming your tenant admin has enabled them. If you click on that store icon in the bottom left-hand side of Teams and you don't see any apps, get in touch with your IT department, because we give them the security and compliance opportunity to block some of those applications. You can also see these publicly available here on this AKA link that we'll share out with you a little bit later. Now, I'm going to cover next is we also get a lot of organizations who want to build their own solutions. And these can be really lightweight, easy solutions. If you remember that flow bot that we got when somebody filled out a registration form, so it notified me in the channel when we were planning for the events. That's a really simple and easy flow to set up. That's a template and requires no coding whatsoever, or frankly, really no technical skills. But you can also go to the very advanced. So we're going to show you some cool examples here in a second. And then finally, I'll leave this for Pawan at the end, but he's going to talk on app templates and how you can customize your existing solutions, which are based on common scenarios that we're seeing around the globe. So we're going to touch on Power Platform here for a bit. Really quickly, going to give you the background because I recognize this might be new to some folks, but then we're going to show some real examples and demos of how this comes together. If you're not familiar with Power Platform, it comes in 3 core components. So Power Apps is the first one, and these are just really simple web and mobile applications. And I'm doing it a disservice by calling it simple. You can make them fairly complex, but they're pretty easy templates to get started. And when I say web and mobile application, that could be something as simple as a form all the way up to a full-fledged application. And then we've got Power Automator Flow, which is automation and workflows. And it's really a set of triggers and actions. So if you remember earlier, again, that example with the registration page request, if somebody filled out that form, it notified us in the general channel and the team I was in. That's a set of triggers and actions, and that was done with Power Automate. And then Power BI obviously lets you visualize and get insights from the data itself. Just to simplify even further, Power Apps is usually a place that receives, it's usually a service that receives the data or information. Power Automate determines where you want to send that data or information. And Power BI usually lets you visualize the results or the impact of that data. So to bring home just a real quick example so you can see the foundational core of what's available in Power Platform and how it might make your life easier at work, I'll do a quick demo. Again, what you're about to see in the context of Teams Platform here is this component right here. So Power Platform, what we're going to cover. So let me pull up my demo real quick. This is an incredibly simple example that I'm going to pull in here. But this is a demo that we showed last year to our partners at our partner conference we do worldwide. And as you can imagine, we work with a lot of vendors at Microsoft to plan back in the good old days when we used to have big in-person conferences and events. But we work with a lot of vendors who are on site helping us put together the conference. And we noticed that there were a lot of very simple requests that would come through and have big delays on them because they're sitting in someone's email inbox. So as an example, how do you want the chairs to be organized in a room? Do you want the speaker to have the cheat screen that sits in front of the stage? All kinds of requests that we had to deal with in marketing. And we wanted to make it easy for these vendors to get responses very quickly and approvals or declines for things that they were requesting to get the conference set up and run more smoothly and get it done more quickly. And so what you're looking at here is a mobile version of a Power Application. So our vendors could have access to this by being in this Teams team and this channel, and by going into this tab in the channel partner event that says events to staff. So on the mobile device, this is exactly what this would look like for a vendor. And if they had a new request for an approval, they could hit that plus sign, and this simple form would pop up here in the Power Application that they fill out. Now, I'm going to save us the time of filling this out for the sake of time. But there's two things that would happen once that person hits submit. So this is Power Automate here, and the triggers and actions. And so the trigger is you put in the data, you hit submit, and the action is twofold. One is a new file will go into a SharePoint list. So a new file will be populated for the users who are going to be doing approvals and setting those up. And then Flow, much like you saw on the registration page earlier, will also automatically send us a notification into the Teams channel of our choice. Now, this is very easy to set up as a user, regardless of your technology background. Now, I accidentally hit the approve button the other day, but the way this normally comes up is there's a button to approve or reject the request. Now, that notification will go back to the original requester, but there's a bunch of other things you could do. You could also have a button on there that allows you to start a conversation with the requester in case you want more information. So the sky is really the limit here on all these things that you could do. But again, by going in and filling out that simple form, hitting submit, this is the automatic notification we get. And if you had multiple people in this channel who could approve these simple requests, it would get done much more quickly, and this would allow the conference planning to flow much more smoothly. So again, just a quick background there on the core components of a Power Platform so everybody can see what's possible. Now, I want to go back to a customer who took this to the next level. And so again, forgive me with all these imagine ifs, but I wanted to set the stage before we actually go in and share these examples. So imagine if you had an approval process at work that takes longer than it should. So going back to those scenarios and where does work slow down? Imagine if you have a process where multiple people are taking the same data and putting it into different systems, but they can't put it into their system until the previous person finished putting it into their system. And it's this long line of delays. And this was the exact challenge that was facing Javi. So these guys are about a 10,000 person organization who do marketing and supply chain based out of the UK. Brilliant organization. But in this context, they were really struggling with their new hire pre-boarding process. And by that, we mean the time that started when a new hire or a vendor was told that they were being offered a role at Javi, and the 2 weeks that went by before they started work on day one at Javi. And everything that happened behind the scenes to make sure that that person had a laptop, an email address, and all of the things that they needed to actually get work done on their first day of work. And so again, we're going to show you one more quick video here, and then we're going to dive behind the scenes here. I got to say, as much as I love the Dentsu example, and it's brilliant what they did, this is one of my favorite scenarios in Teams because it is so applicable to a variety of organizations. And you'll see how when we actually show you what they did. So again, a quick minute video, and then we'll show you exactly how they delivered what you're about to see.
Javi is located all over the world. We have about 9,000 to 10,000 employees.
We tend to use a lot of freelancers. With that comes a lot of paperwork with the onboarding.
The problem with a manual process is the accuracy of the data.
We have to find better ways of onboarding people.
We quickly saw the advantage and the potential of Teams and the Power Apps.
So by automating document processing, we can speed up all paper-based processes that we have.
Before the app, registration process could take 2 weeks. Now we managed to reduce the time to less than 40 minutes.
Microsoft Teams is allowing us to centralize many of the operations, such as SharePoint and messaging, voice communications.
Now we have all those forms, all those documents in one central place, and that central place is Teams. We use Teams all over the world.
Possibilities are exciting for the future.
Teams is here to stay.
All right, so diving into a little background here on Javi, we think we covered most of it, but again, they were struggling with these new hires coming into the organization. And then what would happen is you get that new hires information and a bunch of different people would put it into different systems, and it was causing huge delays. And so I want to show you and draw out, like we did with Dentsu, exactly what this journey looks like for Javi. And so what you're going to see, and this is no disrespect to Javi, I call this chaos, but what this looked like prior to the solution that they talked about in the video. And I'm not sure if you picked it up, but we talked about Power Apps earlier. They showed a screenshot of the Power App that they delivered, which we'll talk through in a bit. But this is how the process was going when it was causing a bit of chaos for Javi internally. And what would happen is when a Javi HR rep, they would reach out to a new contractor and congratulate them because they had received an offer to come work for Javi. And they'd ask them for some personal information so they could get the process started onboarding or pre-boarding, if you will. And so the new contractor would send back some personal information, and then that Javi rep would take that information and they go enter it into their HR systems. And usually it was multiple systems. For the simplicity of this slide, I just put one here. And then once entering that information, they'd email out their peers in different departments all around the globe. They'd go put that same person's information into their systems, again, to get laptops ordered, email addresses set up, Azure Active Directory organized, and then they notify the original HR rep that they had completed the process. So as you can imagine, lots of manual data entry. And by that, again, I mean typing in the same data and information in multiple systems from multiple people. Best case scenario, this process would take 5 to 6 cumulative work hours to complete. Unfortunately, the process would often break down somewhere around here. And by that, I mean there'd be a bottleneck because somebody missed the email and never input the information, or there was an incorrect name was misspelled, date of birth was input incorrectly, tax ID number was input incorrectly. And so unfortunately, a process that should take 5 to 6 cumulative hours to complete was actually on average taking 2 to 3 weeks. Now here's the challenge with that process taking 2 to 3 weeks is that this person now was in serious jeopardy of starting work on day one with nothing to do, no laptop, no email address, and potentially even spending their first week inside of a boardroom. So there's potentially a serious turnover challenge at this point. You can also imagine that these people are probably very reactively responding to things in their jobs and putting band-aids on things rather than actually proactively working on things that they want to do in order to improve the process because this was happening so often. By the way, I'm just going to address this real quick. I got a question from Miguel. Tomorrow's content for EMEA, if somebody couldn't join, will be the same stuff. Yes, to that question, for those who are going to be joining our calls in other time zones. All right, so now what did Javi do post-solution? So you just saw what this was looked like prior to the solution. Now you saw the video. This is what they implemented to make life easier internally. Is the process would start the same way. So the Javi HR rep would reach out to the new contractor, congratulate them on the role. They'd send back some information. But instead of directly putting that information into their internal system, what the Javi HR rep would do now is they'd enter that information one time into a Power App. So again, think of the registration request form that I showed you at the very beginning, or think of the event approval form that we just showed you moments ago. Same concept, and you saw it really briefly in the video, and we'll send you the video out there. But it's a form to just input this personal information. And what it did, because the Power App had the back end, which was Power Automate, or these flows, if you will, is once the HR rep hit submit with that information, it would automatically send this information directly into these other systems. Now, to clarify, these are HR systems and multiple systems internally built by Javi. These are not Microsoft systems right there. And so this flow was automatically sending that personal information from the new contractor into these systems. Now there was only one manual data entry, which happened right here. And this process that best case took 5 to 6 hours, average case took 2 to 3 weeks, now had been reduced to 40 minutes, thanks to this really simple Power App and Power Automate that Javi had put up. And when I say simple, I'm not trying to do a disservice to their work. It took them some time to put this together. But the core foundation of what they did is pretty simple in terms of what they were trying to achieve. And now even better, this person is starting work on day one, ready to go. These people can now more proactively work on what they want to accomplish in their roles. And funny enough, at Javi, it was how do we create a great first day onboarding experience for new hires now that we've got the time to do it. Just to summarize, again, recognizing that we've got folks of all backgrounds here on the call, what happened at its core in this case is that the Power App received the new hire information and the Power Automate determined where that information was sent. And if you go back to the slide, it was automatically sending the information into these systems right here, these Javi built internal systems. Now, a lot of people ask us, how do you achieve this? Was it difficult? Does it require a bunch of coding? We actually are Javi was kind enough to share their runbook with us. So that is a direct link to a PDF that's got their runbook on it that shows the steps they put together to make this happen and make it a reality. Now, if this isn't relevant to you as a user in your organization, you saw a couple examples of how I use this every day. I'm not going to go build this for our HR department, right? That's not my technical expertise. But you saw how I make my life easier receiving registration requests, how I make my life easier using API, right? All of these different components that are pretty simple to set up in a lot of cases and leverage, again, in order to make life simpler and get work done with the tools that I have at my disposal. Now, the last thing I'm going to say here before I pass over to the legendary Pawan, who's going to come on and talk to you about app templates, is that if you looked at this example and you saw this as an onboarding scenario, I'd like to reiterate that we all struggle with this stuff, Microsoft included. We all have processes that slow us down at work. We all have manual approval processes that are waiting for the previous person to submit something before we can. And so I came from banking industry actually before I worked in technology, and I would have loved if I was in a JP Morgan Chase branch and if my bank loan officer could have sent a virtual request, like so an email request or a digital application to my client in order to fill that out for a loan application. And then rather than reaching out to the underwriter, the loan processor, and the seemingly infinite number of people who had to be involved to approve or deny a loan, is that person could have put it into a Power App, much like we did a Hobby, and that could have automated the sending of that loan request into all of our internal systems. So we could ultimately get that person a response on their loan application much more quickly than we had to before. So again, we all struggle with this stuff, and we'd encourage you, not just today, but as we go through these community calls moving forward, we're going to do our best to show and showcase these scenarios that we know many organizations around the planet are dealing with and how others have solved them, mostly focusing with your peers around the world. So look, with that, you're going to hear me shut up for a bit. I want to pass this over to Pawan Gulati. So Pawan looks after Power Apps for our customer success organization, and he works quite often with these application templates. And we thought it'd be a great additional focus to help you get started. So Pawan, are you on, man? You all good to get going on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jace. Would you be running the slides for me? You want me to take over?
For you.
All right, excellent. I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about app templates, and we've got maybe a specific app template we could dive into, but really what we wanted to cover was essentially what are app templates. And you've heard Jace talk a lot about apps today, the apps that come inbuilt, the apps that you can probably build using Power Apps, Power Automate, things he was showing. We built some of them for you. And think of these as your starter pack. Think of these app templates as a place to go and check out some existing best practices, or think of them as app templates that are production ready, plug and play apps if the scenario meets your needs. And again, these are open source app templates available on GitHub. So feel free to download them, extend them, rebrand them, adapt them, enhance them, and make them your own. Each of the app templates comes with detailed guidance and instructions on how do you deploy, how do you install, how do you extend. And as I said, the source code is available in GitHub, so you can definitely take those and adapt them and make them your own. Now, we're not necessarily focusing on FAQ plus bot or company communicated today. We've done that in some other sessions. And as Jay said earlier, over a series of sessions, we'll do deeper dives on some of these apps and scenarios. But these are excellent apps to look at. Where I would take you is the link at the bottom, the Teams app templates. If you want to see which app templates are available, and I think we have, as of last count, maybe 20, 21, somewhere between 5 and 10 app templates get rolled out every quarter. And we are accelerating that pace this year. So you'll see a ton of those come out. So keep that link handy. Teams app templates, ak.ms Teams app templates is a place to go where you can check out all of our app templates. Some of these are built using Azure bot framework. So the chat bots, there was a example of a bot earlier. If you want to build your own bot, we've got actually an FAQ plus bot template that's listed here, and we'll talk about those in the follow-up sessions, hopefully. But you can use that to point to your own knowledge banks or your own knowledge bases and build an FAQ bot. Call that your FAQ bot, HR bot, support bot, But you can build that to have a chatbot service for your employees to get answers to frequently asked questions. Some of these app templates are built using Azure custom logic, custom code, again, leveraging Azure services, and others are leveraging the Power Platform, some of the pieces that Jay has highlighted, again, using Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automate. Chase, would you mind switching to the next one? And again, feel free to chime in if there was something else. I mean, we all understand the world is a changed place today than it was perhaps 2.5, 3 months back for us. And again, depending on where you're joining us from, you may have been experiencing this situation longer than some of us in the US. But it is fair to say that all our lives have been impacted. And at Microsoft, we try to look at this and say, what can we do to help the community? If you haven't seen, and I'll paste a link in the chat window here in a couple of minutes, but in March, we rolled out a crisis communication app for companies looking to coordinate their knowledge sharing, their communication, the news, latest news updates with their employees as their employees were in the field. And now that most of us are working remotely, and organizations are planning to get back to office, gradually reopening those locations, they're looking at ways to do that safely. Right. So we've heard from a lot of organizations where they are looking to gradually open offices, but they want to do that by adhering to the social distancing norms. They want to make sure that they don't bring in 100% of the capacity on day one. They gradually ramp that up and manage that occupancy threshold. Some of you are actually looking to control who comes into office, so manually approve those requests, or perhaps put together some kind of a logic behind the scenes that says, hey, for these type of scenarios, yep, let them be auto approved. So we just want to know who's in the office or how many are in the office. So we're looking at the capacity and the occupancy at any point in time. But others are saying, well, I do want to manage. Maybe there are essential workers who need to be on site, and others, the discretionary workers, we need to control who's on site. So what we've done is over the last couple of weeks, we started to put together a Power Platform based solution. Think of this, as I said earlier, an open source app template that will be rolled out in the next 5 to 7 days. And this is going to be leveraging, again, Power Apps, Power Automate, SharePoint behind the scenes, Power BI dashboards for your insights. Comes with a suite of 3 different apps. And again, that just goes to the 3 different personas, and we'll talk a little bit about those personas on the next slide. But the intent is the end users need a way to make a request. I need to be in the office on Monday at building so and so. The managers need to be notified, maybe even approve optionally. And the facilities need to say, yes, this building is open for people to come in. We've done what we needed to do in terms of preparing this building for people to go work out of, and security teams then need to be made aware that people are coming in, and perhaps monitor or physically check them in by validating that you are approved to be on site. That's kind of the key solution aspect that we are working for this app template of. I believe there were a couple of questions in the chat window. I answered some, but there were questions around, hey, who gets to use Power Platform? Well, if you have an Office 365 license, you do have seeded Power Platform licenses. Yes, there are nuances between what you get with seeded versus if you were doing getting a Power Platform paid license. So please work with your Microsoft teams on ensuring that you have that license. But the app templates we are building, these are based on the seeded license capabilities, which means we don't expect the app templates to require any additional license. The only thing I would call out for sake of completeness is the asterisk next to the Power BI dashboard. Power BI dashboards require an additional Power BI license, but obviously that's not for your entire enterprise. It's the small group of people that are managing and planning and tracking that would need that license. Having said that, the solution All our open source solutions, will use a data source. Again, for Power Platform, we will, with all the app templates we built so far, use SharePoint data sources in the backend, which means you can do your internal reporting, tracking using the SharePoint list, export it to Excel. You can do additional insights. You can do a lot of that without getting to Power BI. However, we will get you a Power BI dashboard template if you wish to use that, or use that for creating your own templates out of that. As I said, in terms of time frame, we are working on it this week, and we hope to have the app template published to GitHub sometime mid next week. Chase, if you wouldn't mind going to the next one.
Yes, you got 2 minutes and 4 slides left. So which slide would you
No,
want to close on?
Just the next one.
Yeah, cool.
We're not going to go to all of them. I think those will leave for the deeper dive. So this takes us to kind of what we are putting together. I won't have to drain the slide. Again, I'll leave this up, and this will be included as part of the recording. But the app itself is going to be built for, some key personas. The first one, as I said, would be your facilities teams. Think of these teams defining the key eligibility criteria, the health questions. Have you been sick? Are you exposed to someone who is sick? Whatever your health criteria is that you're creating as a gate to somebody coming into office. What are the buildings that you're making available for workers to work out of? What is the occupancy threshold, criteria for auto approval versus manager approval? You define all of that. Your employees and managers, kind of the middle 2 rows in here, these are the primary users of the app. So they are making the request to be on site, checking on their requests, either approving their direct reports or getting approved, and then walking into the building on the day of arrival to make sure that they can then log themselves / check themselves in. So the app has components where not only can you make a request, but once your request is approved, on the day of arrival, you go in and you check yourself in. In a case of a monitored or a secured building, a security team personnel can quickly scan your QR code and let you in. So you have the ability to reserve spaces. You have the ability to track and manage who's on site, and you have the ability to control who walks in and walk out of the building. With that, I know we are at time. I will try and monitor the Q&A for the next few minutes, but if you have any questions, please get them in the chat and we'll happy to answer that. We will do a deeper dive on this in the next session or one of the next sessions, and stay tuned for announcements coming on the app template as well.
That's awesome, and really looking forward. What we'll probably do is, if probably our next call, we'll cover exactly what Pawan just touched on. So really appreciate you giving us a little sneak peek, Pawan. I know you guys put a bunch together to get that going. Just want to again thank everybody for joining the call today. If you found it valuable, we have already put up next month's call, and I'll share this out with over the next 24 hours via email with the recording as well as the slides. Again, Pawan mentioned this, but if you have any questions or you want to get started on your own solution here, definitely connect with your Microsoft account team or keep the questions coming, and we're happy to help you go on. We'll leave the Q&A open for a while. We also have a superheroes community we started on Teams. So give me a shout right there. That's my direct email if you want to join, where we keep a lot of these conversations going after today and in between the calls. And then most importantly, if you would, again, I'll send you a link out to this, and this is the QR code for it if you want to do it with your mobile phone. We'd love to hear how we did, but frankly, I think our key thing here is we want to understand what you want to hear about. Right, so what features of Microsoft Teams and the experience, particularly around platform, do you want to hear about moving forward? And how can we make sure that we're bringing you content that's relevant and helpful to you and your organization? So please do, if you have some time, share that out. Again, we'll put the link in the chat here in a moment. But most importantly, thank you for spending an hour with us today. Hope everybody enjoyed this. Hope it was valuable. Again, we look forward to your feedback, and we look forward to doing many of these with you and introducing you into some of the awesome team here that made a lot of this happen. So thanks again to everybody behind the scenes who was helping. Thanks again to everybody who made this a reality, and big thanks to Pawan for stepping up and getting on the call as well. In the meantime, everybody out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you hopefully again in August. If you have peers in Europe, Middle East, Africa, as well as Asia, who you might think benefit with this call, we're also doing calls in those time zones later today and tomorrow. So I'll send that link out too. But thank you again so much, everybody. Take care.